Hello, my name is Noah Fortner, and this is my presentation on Diabolique. Directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot, this transgressive 1950s thriller is remembered as the first big film that relies on a significant twist ending. There's even an ending card that asks the audience not to tell anyone what they just saw. It was adapted from the 1952 French novel She Who Was No More. In the film, the wife and mistress of a vile and abusive school principal devise a plot to have him killed. The wife, Christina, is quite meek, while the mistress, Nicole, is a much stronger-willed and driven woman. This results in an interesting and tumultuous relationship between the two as they move forward with and eventually execute their plan. Once the principal, Michael, is done away with, Christina and Nicole hide the body in such a way that when it is found, it will seem like an accident. However, Michael's body soon disappears, and it would seem that someone is in on the two women's secret. As we later learn, Michael has been alive the entire time and was plotting alongside his mistress to scare Christina into a heart attack. Unfortunately, they succeed, and it looks as if the two lovers will get away scot-free. That is, until an ex-cop investigating Michael's disappearance overhears the two and has them taken away. The film ends on an eerie note, implying that Christina's spirit remains on the school grounds. Director Henri-Georges Clouzot was born in 1907 and died in 1977. He had quite a prolific career, with his most popular films being the thriller The Wages of Fear, 1953, and of course Diabolique. He is also known for the documentary The Mystery of Picasso, 1956, which is considered a national treasure by the French government. His time as a director was not without controversy, as he would be fired from his job at UFA Studio in Nazi Germany because of his Jewish friends. In Nazi France, he was again fired from Continental Films for the controversy that arose from his film Les Corbeaux, which criticized provincial France. He was then banned from filmmaking altogether until 1947, when he would come back in full form. Starring in the film were actors Vera Clouzot, the director's spouse, Simone Signoret, Charles Vanel, and Paul Meurus. Sadly, in 1960, Vera would die, ironically, from a heart attack. The rest of Clouzot's career was negatively affected, and depression, illness, and later death in 1977 followed. There are religious elements to the film, such as Christina's devout Christian faith. In the film, her faith is presented as somewhat of a roadblock, preventing her from seeking a divorce from her abusive husband, even though he shamelessly flaunts his mistress around the school. It also must be understood that divorce laws at the time were very paternalistic. While the film goes to great lengths to show how abusive Michael is, it's important to realize that society was far less likely to side with women over men in disputes. In this way, the film is also about female liberation and sexual freedom. Clouzot is said to have a very pessimistic view of humanity, and that is something that is reflected here. Michael is practically pleading to be killed off. He is putrid and vile. Nicole is a seamlessly selfless and supporting woman, though she is really out for herself. And poor Christina, try as she may, ultimately succumbs to death. And though Michael succeeds in killing his wife, he and Nicole's arrest renders the whole bloody affair pointless. It's all quite bleak. The film was also remade in the US under the same name, and while it was critically panned, it was notably closer in line with the novel in its treatment of the story's sapphic undertones, which were too taboo in the 1950s, even for European audiences. Clouzot's filmography was largely filled to the brim with backstabbings and death. Actress Brigitte Bardot noticed that he was a negative being, forever at odds with himself and the world around him. With that being said, he enjoyed writing nuanced characters that held the capacity for both good and evil. The film also seems to flirt with the supernatural. Once we think that Michael may be a ghost, and a second time when the little boy says that he saw Christina at the end. And while the film is mostly framed as a mystery thriller, the ending sequence is ripped straight out of a horror film, with the ghastly Michael rising from the tub and ritualistically removing his contact lenses. Diabolique is perhaps most influential in the ways it inspired the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock, who had wanted to adapt the original book before being beaten to the punch by Clouzot. Hitchcock would later adapt another one of the author's works, D'entre les Morts, into Vertigo, one of the director's most famous films. The film also solidified Clouzot's place as a master of the filmmaking craft overseas, where Hitchcock even screened it to writers. Ever since, countless cultures have been frothing at the mouth for suspense-driven, plot-twist-heavy stories. The campaign to not spoil the film was even borrowed by Hitchcock for Psycho, and is reminiscent of social media posts today. As we've seen, Diabolique is well versed in the art of suspense, the art of murder, the art of shock, the art of the twist. What makes it all come together so nicely is Clouzot's understanding of writing and storytelling structure. While it's all been mimicked and done to death, when you put yourself in the perspective of a 50s audience member, it's easy to see how the twist had been so effective. Everything you think you know is flipped on its head. You are wrong to assume things were just as they were. The recontextualization of Michael's death and Nicole's allegiance makes for an entirely different experience upon rewatch, too. There are a few instances of symbolic imagery, such as the paper boat that gets squished by Michael at the beginning, encapsulating the tone of the film. Audiences have pointed out the queer coding in the film as well. Although Nicole turns out to ultimately be plotting alongside Michael to have Christina killed, there are undoubtedly some strong queer undertones present, however heteronormalized the film adaptation may be. The original novel introduces yet another plot twist on top of what happens in the film. It is revealed that the wife and mistress were actually themselves lovers, and that their plan was to have the husband commit suicide so that they could run away with his money. Back to the film, while the plot never reveals anything of the sort, Nicole and Christina are visibly intimate, leaving on holiday together and even sharing a bed. While she does betray Christina, Nicole's novel counterpart was actually playing both sides. In a 2020 article on the subject, Morbidly Beautiful wrote that, in this way, she's an early prototype of the bisexual femme fatale. The 1996 remake leans harder into the queer subtext, perhaps even elevating it to text. While not considered a strong adaptation, many critics have praised that particular element of the film. While most Americans will certainly not have heard of it, much less seen it, Diabolique has nonetheless impacted the world of cinema in ways we are still feeling today. Thankfully, due to the advent of streaming, as well as companies like the Criterion Collection putting out films like this in America in high quality, it is very easy to access this film. Hopefully more people will now be able to go back, give it a watch, and appreciate what it's done for the genre and for film at large.